Welcome everyone to this week's live stream on remote work. Today I'm going to be joined by our VP GM, Abhay Kulkarni, who's going to talk to us about meetings and obviously security because this has been a topic across the industry. We're hearing a ton from our customers, from our partners. I don't think we can look at the news about conferencing and not hear about this. So really that's going to be our focus today. And really just share with you our overall experience with the conversations we're having. So welcome, Abhay. I'm really happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Lorrissa. This is great that you're doing this series. Really awesome.
Yeah, we're excited. We want to share all of our knowledge with all of our customers, and I think this is the best way to do it. So let's start off with, remote work. So we've now been in here. I think I'm kind of in week 5 of lockdown. I think you're in a very similar state, maybe a week behind. And we've really seen this change in remote work and how people are working. I often tell people, the first week, it's like, I'm going to take my physical meetings and I'm going to make them virtual meetings. And then after that, there's a bunch of other stuff that people have to figure out. And really, remote work is just a portion of that as meetings. All the other engagements, I mean, you and I don't live in the same city and we work and talk to each other every single day. I think those are things that are also starting to bubble up as themes and as questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the new remote work and that reality that you're seeing.
Yeah, great question. So for me, yeah, it's been 4 weeks now, as you said, and because I work in the Cisco headquarters, I used to go to work almost every single day, and so I was used to finding people in the office, going and talking to them in person, and doing a quick 15-minute conversation, or sort of sharing information, in a hard copy, if it was a letter or something on a piece of paper or something like that. Well, obviously, all that has changed. That's one thing. And everybody who used to be in the office with me now is suddenly remote, even though they might be a few blocks away.
Yeah.
I'm not meeting them anymore. But what has worked in our favor with, especially with Webex Teams and Webex Meetings and our teams, is that we always had remote teams. We had teams in overseas, we have teams on the East Coast, we have teams in different time zones. So we were used to meeting people virtually. We were used to conducting business this way. So it didn't feel like a huge change for us. It almost felt natural for us to say, okay, now just like the guys on the East Coast I meet on video, I'm going to be meet my folks in San Jose over video as well. And so that felt natural. The other part is obviously uh, the number of meetings increased quite a bit, right? Because the informal conversations that you were having, the hallway conversations, they all now require meetings. I mean, you and I, how many times have we done 10 minutes? Yes, and we chat
Yeah.
with each other and do conduct business. So that has increased quite a bit. And I think having video in those meetings just makes it so make it feel so real, right? So we can now acknowledge that, okay, we talked to you and I saw your body language when I asked you a question that you didn't like. You're like, I don't like that. So that also helps. So I think that has made all of us feel close, even though we are in a lockdown.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think reading body language is such a critical part of what you get in real life. And video is really the only way to continue to read the body language. I think the words alone are not enough. And this is proving to everyone, like, this is why you turn your video on, right? Like, you should always have your video on because you can't trust the words alone. And I think that's been a big change. I think as part of all of that, the topics that we're discussing are super critical to our business, right? So whether it's the customers and their journey during the situation, whether it's our sales, and coming up in the quarter, the partnerships that we have. I mean, these are really pretty important conversations across chat, across calls, across meetings. So tell us a little bit about security because your team also manages, all of our compliance, our
Mhm.
controls, and really thinking through strategically what is it that we need to provide to our customers so that they can have, what they need to run their business.
Yeah, no, so security has always been very important when it came to communications, all kinds of communications, right? Whether it's messaging, which is why we have end-to-end, security encryption, like your team builds on Teams messaging, and when it comes to reliable conversation having on video. security is always important. You always refer back to the phone tapping scandals and the wire tapping scandals, and somebody was listening on to you, right? Well, that is not that is should not be possible in the modern world, and so is also privacy, because now we are also taking phones calls, video calls over all kinds of mediums. You are doing it on your mobile phone, your tablets, your laptops, your video devices. So you want to have private conversations. So security has suddenly become very important, because now also the conference or the hallway conversations, or shutting the door behind somebody and talking to them one on one, well, all that has gone away, right? That has been replaced by a video call, and so a lot many more highly confidential conversations are happening over video. Large mergers and acquisitions are being discussed over
Yep.
video. Sales conversations with numbers. You can expect that all the companies that use Webex for doing research on vaccines for coronavirus are discussing some of these conversations on
Yep.
Webex as well. So the bar for security is a lot more higher, and so obviously customers are asking us, hey, so what are the best practices for security, right? What can I do to secure these conversations? And security ranges from all the way from how do I know that I'm only talking to the number of individuals that I'm talking to, and in the one-on-one conversation or with 4 or 5 people, that is easy to manage because you see the roster and say, okay, I'm talking to the people that I'm talking to. But imagine a 40-person meeting, a 50-person meeting, or
Yeah. Or
60-person
the ones
meeting.
you guys have been running with like tens of thousands of people, right? Like
Yes,
those
the
are
large
even
town
harder. I mean,
halls.
right?
Right,
Like those kinds of town halls, it's really hard. Like no one's tracking that every single individual that is in there are
right,
allowed to be in there. Like,
correct.
those are, I think, really even more unmanageable from a scale
Yeah.
standpoint.
Exactly. And I think for that, obviously having the right controls of how you set up those meetings, making sure you practice, follow good best practices around not publishing a meeting ID or a meeting number online publicly or over social media, to attract attention from obvious people who want to ruin the party, so to speak, right? Or some of the trolls who wants to come in and interject. So those are things that people have asked us, and then the final question obviously turns out to encryption, as well as data residency. Especially when we know that many times, there are federal agencies who are conducting some very important business, and they have federal regulations to keep data in country, keep conversations in country, and things like that. They ask us questions about how do we make sure that the right encryption is enabled on the phone, on the video call, or a meeting call, whether it is phone or VoIP, and how do we make sure it's secure, and what are the best practices to do that. So we have published a whole bunch of materials
Yeah.
to help customers really set themselves up to reduce any unwanted intruders from joining the meeting.
It's interesting. You said something about, hallway conversations and being in physical buildings. And one of the things that I think we forget is to get into the building, you had to scan a badge, right?
Yeah,
And so like that's kind of the first layer of security, is that you're not even allowed to be in a physical location where these conversations can be heard. Never mind the shutting of the door, which is an even more secure, smaller set of people. And all of those types of interactions have now converted into a video meeting, or a video call, like those kinds of experiences. And I think you're right in that we can remember all of the things that we did before, but I don't think we necessarily remember all of the ways we had already been securing those
securing.
conversations,
Yep,
that now have to become even more. I think we need to be even more diligent, because the reason there is a badge, the reason why it's not even sometimes a badge to the building, but it's like a badge to a floor, because
yeah,
even your own employees can't come to this one floor, right? Like there were so many things that we had set as physical constraints that are now all gone. And so instead, you can listen in on conversations that will impact change. I think one of the ones I hear all the time is, insider trading. Like with everything going on in the market, it's like we need to make sure that every company is as safe as possible. And it's because the conversations they're having, like you said,
yeah,
are about such critical business impacting matters, that these are top of mind for folks.
yeah.
So talked a lot about, we've already been investing in these, we've been talking about these for a lot of folks. Are there any specific customer examples where it's like maybe a vertical where you're seeing even the practices change because they used to be, very co-located mindset, and now this transformation has happened so quickly that they are having to reimagine, honestly, some of their workflows themselves.
No, it's actually happening across all industries, to be honest with you. It's really started off with in China when the virus broke out. We have a lot of customers who have their branch offices in China or workers in China, and with China under lockdown, they resorted to using Webex, meetings and Teams to collaborate, and we saw traffic spike up, in that region. That was interesting to see. Many of the large pharmaceutical companies had people over there, manufacturing and across all verticals. One of the things that we see in many of especially the healthcare verticals, is how innovative they have become. Whether it is a caregiver to patient conversation, making that available, but they are also cognizant of the fact that they cannot just make that conversation available over video, because guess what? Somebody might try to intrude that conversation, and then there goes your HIPAA regulations about patient privacy. So we have seen a lot of focus around making sure that that is in the walled garden, so to speak, where you sort of go in through by scanning a badge, authenticating yourself, making sure you're the right person, and then you're allowed to enter that meeting for a caregiver patient conversation. We also see in more traditional industries like manufacturing, etc., a lot more emphasis on making sure, especially ideas around designs and new production, uh, sort of pipelines, etc. They are doing it in such a way that they protect it. So things like, I'm going to lock the meeting. I'm going to not allow you to record a meeting, or whether it comes to use of our end-to-end encrypted meetings, which take certain features away, like recordings and web app and telephone conversations. But we have seen customers use that quite a bit as well. So across all industries, we have seen rise of just more. People are more conscious about security. They are a lot more sort of accepting that I may actually enable some security features, and just to make it a little bit harder for the intruders to get in, even if that adds a tiny bit of friction into getting in and out of the meeting, because that is necessary for the conversation that we are having virtually right now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned that. I think one of the areas we focused as Webex on is simplifying the user experience, and I think we've done a great job, continuing to tackle that while keeping everyone safe. Because I think
Yeah.
that's the balance. Is obviously, as many times you have to scan your badge, it's another level of security, and yet like you don't want to have to do that all the time. I think similarly, as a end user experience, we want to make it as easy as possible while still ensuring that all levels of security that we need to turn on are there. It's, you mentioned verticals. One of the conversations I've been having a lot is, my family's been missing sports and are wondering what sports are actually going to happen or not happen. And some of the customers that I had talked to, the level of security around the plays a professional sports team has, right? In some cases, like there's a binder, and this binder is like in a physical vault, like that
Yes.
nobody else can enter. Like it is secrets, and it is really their entire business is dependent on that not being known. So it's not even just the healthcare and the patient HIPAA type stuff. It's also like, how am I gonna
Yeah.
go and win in an entire industry of professional sports that are also really secure. I was shocked at the level of investment that some professional sports team make in just where would they put their plays. And these are plays that go from whiteboard down to some software that can get like triple quadruply secured. So I think you're right, it's all
No,
verticals.
I think what has come to light is that every single business, small or big, any industry, any vertical, has their intellectual property, right? They have their core intellectual property that makes them a business, right? That's why people see value in them. and they obviously want to protect that intellectual property from leaking out, and whether it be a playbook for football teams or whatever it might be, all the way to design of a new car or a potential vaccine that might cure the world. Those are like super important things for many industries, and they if they are discussed and those designs are shared over a virtual video meeting, that needs to be protected even more so. So
Yeah, I
totally
think
agree with you.
the risk of not being protected is extremely high, right? And
Yeah.
in some cases, potentially existential for your company, which is why it's so critical. So definitely agree with you there. As Cisco, we have a security background as our overall DNA. What are things that we have been doing, your team, with regards to engaging the wider Cisco and how we think about security?
Oh, great question. So we have amazing assets at Cisco. We have the Talus intelligence team, which is scouring the web and discovering the bad actors out there, and helping us with reputation scores. We also have our security and endpoint products like AMP, as well as the Duo family or Umbrella and Duo family of products that help us validate who you are and apply the right policies for you in terms of access control and things like that. And finally, with Umbrella, you also have the bigger DNS security, but also extending beyond that, security of what files you share or what interactions you have. So we absolutely have integration with all those aspects as part of Webex Meetings, Webex Teams, and soon with Webex Calling as well. The extended security pack makes all those things available for our customers, um, uh, at a very nice sort of in a little bundle, and that helps us our customers kind of get value out of it very quickly. They don't have to kind of configure different products and sort of make that happen. So that's actually good, a good offering from our side. um, you asked us about how are we maintaining user experience, like because you try tend if you shift your balance way too much over security, um, your user experience sometimes may take a beating because you just introduce a lot of friction for your everyday activities. And which is why we also focus a lot on making our UX really, really simple as well. You and I, we have a
Yep.
lot of meetings every day. Each one of our meetings are password protected. Yet I don't remember the last time I entered a password to get into a Wex
Yeah.
meeting because we use our app to get into a meeting. And even before coronavirus went out, we actually have been doing campaigns with our customers, educating them about how to enable passwords, how that is not going to add friction into the end users' workflows. And after coronavirus, we have further expanded that to tell customers that we have amazing features like even your personal meeting rooms. You can lock the personal meeting rooms immediately after the host starts the meeting, so you're now admitting every single person that comes in. Or you can lock it after a few minutes so that you let people come in. When typically people come in 1 or 2 minutes after the meeting starts, and then after 5 minutes you lock the personal meeting room. So we have some really nice features that sort of also help get you the best UX and also get you security that will make you confident about having critical conversations on WebEx.
Yeah, I think those are really important. Like I said, over the last year, we've invested so much in making the user experience easier while still maintaining the level of security that is important for these kinds of conversations. I do think there's some gaps. I think we have this across all our portfolio where we've built the feature, we've gotten it out there, and yet we haven't necessarily spread the word of how
Yeah.
you can take advantage of it. I frequently do these kinds of customer meetings where like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Like, yeah, that's actually really cool. And so definitely some work for all of us to think about how do we get these into the hands of the end users as fast as possible, and make them aware of it, because it is something that is hugely beneficial to them, both on the simplification and the security side. It shouldn't be an or, right? It should be and. Like you should be able
Yeah.
to get both, and I think that is the optimization we've been making. Um, well, we're going to be closing up soon, but I wanted to ask you, what are the three takeaways that you've been advising, any customer, partner, end user thinking about what they should do with their meetings experience and maybe top concerns for security or just things to look out for. And maybe it's not even a concern. It's just like, hey, here's how you go and set out on this remote work.
Yeah, so I think for all our customers, Cisco or any collaboration customer for that matter, right? Look at the best practices that are published by the vendor, and we have published some best practices around how to secure your meetings environment, and that include all the way from setting up meeting passwords, auto locking your personal meeting rooms, enabling video pins and phone passcodes, and we think that because if you were to use this with our app, it really are not adding any friction. You are sort of enabling the security measures to protect the unwanted attendees from joining your conversations. So definitely look at those and consume those as much as you can and set them up for the right security posture. I also advise people, in these times where people are glued to social media outside of work, there's nothing else happening. On the news channel, you hear about coronavirus and nothing else. So people are going more and more to social media. You have that obvious temptation about, posting information on social media. Just be cognizant of what you're posting. For example, I had a virtual happy hour with my friends the other day, and obviously, we took a picture of everybody holding drinks on Webex with a grid view. And I was tempted to post it on social media, but then I realized that everybody's name labels were showing up. Like, I'm okay with posting this on social media, but all my 8 other friends whose name labels are showing up, will they be okay? And I kind of didn't do that because obviously there is a private there, right? So just be a little bit more cognizant about doing that because we have features like name labels, etc., for a good reason in a large meeting so that you can identify people. But then when you're posting pictures on social media, that
You're
sort of goes to
inadvertently
your
exposing people
expose
without,
people's privacy.
and that was not the intent, but
That
I
was not the
totally
intent,
agree.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not the intent. And the last thing I will also say is that in this world, when there is heightened focus on security because all conversations are happening virtually, uh, there is still other ways of conducting business that you should be looking at. So messaging, I think, is very important, in my opinion. The way you can secure messages with using Webex Teams, for example, with end-to-end security, end-to-end encryption. It gives you that peace of mind without having to get on a live call. So supplement your your conversations, live conversations with offline conversations with messaging because that helps you sort of be secure as well as get business done and not have to worry about all the other predators, right, that might be wanting to intrude those conversations. So we have a nice variety of products out there from Cisco that allows you to conduct business that you should be using to kind of get your work done.
That, and I heard there's a study that they've been doing now around like how tired people feel when they're doing video calls,
Mm.
and how it's been interesting. Basically, the study was saying that when you're on a video call, unlike real life, you feel like you have to constantly be looking at the person and be fully engaged because you're already not in the same physical space. So it's less acceptable to not always be making eye contact and being fully engaged. And so that actually is more tiring for a lot of people. And so the question is, you still have a lot of work to do. How do you get
Yes.
just as much work done, even though some of this is it's a high engagement level, right? Like you can't just nod off or even look at your phone because there's only the people are looking right at you on video, and so it is a different experience and one to get used to. I'd advise lots of people like, look, you get over it, you get better at it. We've been doing it for many years and have been, pretty proficient at running our teams in a remote posture. So it is something to augment all of the ways you work, just keeping in mind that all of the things you talk about are your secrets. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was incredibly helpful, and I'm sure the breadth of knowledge that you have based on just the sheer volume of customers you talk to is something that everyone can learn from and everyone can include in their practices. So that's incredibly valuable for us. Thank you again. And
Thank you,
I'm sure we'll
Lorrissa.
have you come back, talk about even more of the great meeting stuff that you guys have been doing.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Bye.
Bye.